Okay, so I decided to make this too, and I have to make it in under 13 minutes. And, what was I about to say? Dang, wait a minute, this is sad, I forgot already. Okay, so basically, this is going to be about what makes people schizophrenic. So, like I've already said plenty of times before, all mental illness comes from trauma, and then there's the generational trauma, and then that generational trauma from abuse also still leads to mental illness. So, abuse and trauma is what causes it. Of course, psychiatry tries to act like this isn't true, and the whole of the Cash for Kids system does, because they all profit off of abused and traumatized kids that are either called the crazy kids or the quote-unquote bad kids or the quote-unquote bad black kids. And so, what was I saying? Yeah, so that's what all of it comes from. But of course, psychiatry came, or really the mental health system came, to misconstrue what causes mental illness and all of that. Because before that came, that whole white supremacist eugenics project known as the mental health system. I mean, even the medical system in the U.S. was founded off of that same stuff. But before that came, people knew what caused mental illness. They knew it came from trauma and generational abuse and all that. And they knew how to treat it, just like with other medical problems. But then the medical system as a whole came and misconstrued everything. And then they said that all people that had melanin and were dark skinned were all crazy and sick, and they had an illness. And then they said that we had leprosy, even though it's the other way around, and that's not what it was. And then they said that everybody who was dark skinned was mentally ill, and the only way to cure their mental illness was to peel their skin back to the white meat, and once the white meat was showing, they were healed, and all that stuff. That's what all of that was. And then they messed everything up. And so, luckily, due to the whole Munchausen syndrome by proxy stuff that I went through, I was able to piece together the whole Cash for Kids system and stuff, and really understand all of it, with being locked up with people who were in somewhat similar situations. I mean, everybody in these institutions in the Cash for Kids system, from the TTI to the juvenile justice institutions, all of it is a whole bunch of abused, traumatized people. Well, sometimes, because one thing I can say about the whole juvenile justice thing is that they do sometimes find people with actual real parents, and they just snatch the kids away from them, and because lawyers have a lot of power, and then they lock the kids up for money. So sometimes in the juvenile justice system, there are people that get thrown into the Cash for Kids system that aren't in some crazy abuse situation, but usually it's the traumatized people. So anyway, yeah, so now I can talk about what causes schizophrenia, and it's going to be really simple. So, as you may know, when you get abused and you get traumatized and all that, you start creating complexes, and you start trying to piece everything together and process it, or at least you eventually start, because usually when you're really, really young, you don't even really understand that the abuse is going on, and you can actually still get through it and seem pretty normal to the outside world. Like, you can do good in school still sometimes, and you can still make all A's, but then once you start getting to like the preteens and the teen years, then really things start falling apart even more. And then you start showing even more symptoms of trauma, and then you can't do good in school anymore, you're always falling asleep. But it's not always like that, though. Sometimes you show signs earlier. And one thing I can say is psychiatry likes to also act like this isn't true, because they like to act like you don't develop BPD and you don't develop CPTSD or PTSD till you're 18 plus, but that's not true either. The reason that they act like people under 18 can't have this is because the people under 18 who do, they're still pickpocketing and making money off of them in their abuse situation, working with their abusers / perpetrators, which are the parents and guardians and the family. That's why they act like people under 18 can't have this. So anyway, then you start feeling like all certain groups of people, you start, what's the word? I forgot the word. You start basically putting people in categories. So like the people that believe all men are bad, that's because they all got raped and molested and they witnessed domestic violence, or they had one of those single strong black women moms that told them all men were bad, and so now they have this complex. And these are the people that once they have a baby boy, they start comparing their newborn boy to their molesters and rapists and their mom's old boyfriends and all that stuff. And so they create these complexes and they start thinking funny. And so this all goes into schizophrenia. Because of schizophrenia, you start trying to piece together your abuse and why this happened and why that happened. And then you start trying to connect dots that really don't even go together. So like, if somebody was sexually abused by somebody who was like cross-eyed, anytime they see a cross-eyed person, they're gonna say they're a child molester and they sexually abuse people. So they start connecting dots that really don't even go together, and then they have this whole theory, and then they make, and it's kind of funny though, or at least what I'm about to say, not like the situation, but they'll make a whole Reddit group, and then it'll be like, wait a minute, I'm messing this up. Okay, so like targeted persons, they'll make a targeted persons Reddit group saying, I have a theory that all cross-eyed people are secretly Satanist child molesters, and really it's because they're trying to connect dots that aren't even there, because they just can't understand why what happened to them happened. So they're trying to like connect dots and put things together that don't go together, because they want to like understand why so many bad things happen to them. And it's like when the trauma doesn't get healed, and then they're usually the type of people that'll go from saying I had a good childhood, because the same people that say that also become narcissists. And actually narcissism and schizophrenia can sometimes go hand in hand and be pretty similar. And then they'll go from saying that to realizing that everything was bad, and then they start trying to piece together things late, and they're already pretty messed up by the point they start trying to piece together the fact that they were abused. And then that's when they start connecting all these dots that don't go together. I really wish I could have explained it better than I just did. I'm hoping that made some type of sense, because that cross-eyed thing was just one example. Or like, this is actually based off of something that I kind of heard before. At least the lady was saying something somewhat similar, although they didn't say that she was schizophrenic. The lady who was saying something that was somewhat similar to this, they said she was having a psychotic break, although hers wasn't revolved around abuse. It was really revolved around limerence obsessions, and I don't even remember what the video was called. But I'm going to think about what she said and then piece it together to make another example. So like, let's say this is somebody who remembers the dates that really bad things happened in their whole abusive childhood. So let's say March 33rd. That's not a thing. March, I'm just gonna keep going. Let's say March 33rd. Their dad got hit by a car by their mom, who was a narcissist, and she ran him over because she was trying to force him to pay child support, but she wouldn't even let him see his kids. So March 33rd, she ran their dad over, and then their mom did a whole bunch of other stuff too. And so they meet somebody whose birthday is March 33rd, and then they start trying to piece things together, because the moment that they know that's the person's birthday, they start having flashbacks. Because it seems like, to me, people with schizophrenia live in a constant state of flashbacks, and they're constantly trying to piece together their trauma and their abuse, but they're not doing it right, so they're connecting a whole bunch of weird dots. And so anyway, the moment they had that, they go into flashback mode, and then they say, you know what? You're secretly related to my mom because she ran my dad over on March 33rd. And so since your birthday is March 33rd, you were the one who gave her the car to run him over with, and secretly you're in an organization where you run people's dads over. Because sometimes when they're triggered, they may kind of like go in little tangents like this, but all of it isn't just a whole bunch of crazy mess. They're saying this because something happened, even though they're connecting dots that don't go together. It's all for a reason. Because another thing the mental health system likes to do is make it seem like people just get issues out of the blue. Like you walk outside and catch bipolar like it's a common cold. I'm messing this video up really bad, but I'm gonna keep going. So you catch a bipolar like it's a common cold. That's what they try to make it seem like. But really that's not even true. And so everything that the person is saying happened, especially if they're talking about their actual perpetrators and not some random person walking down the street, that did happen. And yes, they were abused by whatever relative they're saying they were abused by. And that's why they're schizophrenic. And also, another thing that I've noticed is that all mental illness is just different forms of being double-minded and being having a split mind. And actually, schizophrenia means split minds, and DID is also split minds. And they're just different forms of similar things, but with more symptoms or less symptoms than the other thing. And it's just different trauma complexes. That's all mental illness really is different complexes from trauma. But of course, the mental health system won't admit this because they're profiting off of everybody's abuse. And a lot of people with BPD have dissociative amnesia. Well, not dissociative amnesia. They dissociate from their trauma to where they don't even remember it. So there's a lot of statistics where people with BPD say that they don't remember being abused because the whole situation was so bad they don't remember their childhood. And so they're putting in statistics trying to make it seem like these people weren't abused. Really the same thing they do with the LGBTQ plus, and they act like everybody wasn't sexually abused. All it is a whole bunch of hiding statistics. That's all they do with all these different things. But I don't think I have any time left.